Section 5.2, day 1. Hopefully this example looks familiar to you. This is one of the word problems we looked at from section 5.1. And from the given information, we were able to generate this system of linear equations. All we're going to do now is we're going to solve this thing by using Gauss-Jordan elimination method. So the first step is to rewrite this system of linear equations as an augmented matrix. So that would look like this. And then since we already have a 1 in our 1, 1 entry or in the upper left-hand corner, we don't have to multiply row 1 by anything because we're good to go. And so the first move is going to be to make this 42 a 0. So how do we do that? Like this. Row 2 is the row that's changing. And how do we want it to change? Well, we want this to become a 0. So all we got to do is write down the opposite of this number in front of the row that contains our pivot entry, which is row 1. I'm going to actually pull out my calculator here and perform this row operation using my calculator. So, see if we can do this. All right. So the first thing is actually, let me back up here. First thing is to make sure you put the matrix in there correctly. Go to Edit, and then make sure it's a 2 by 3, and make sure your matrix looks like the one on your paper. So 1, 1, 500, and then of course 42, 30, and then 18,600. Once you've entered that in, we're going to perform this row operation to zero out this 42. Okay. So what I'm going to do is hit second X inverse to go to the matrix menu, and then let's see if I can. Okay, so now what we're going to do is math times row plus. The first entry is the multiplier. All right, in this case it's minus 42. The second entry is the matrix we're working on, which is matrix A. The third entry is the row that's being multiplied by negative 42, which is row 1. So we put in a 1. And the fourth parameter here is the row that's going to be changing, which is row 2. Let's hit enter, make sure it looks good. And it looks pretty good to me. We have a 0 right there, that's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and write this down on my paper. All right, and so first column is complete. Now remember, in your calculator, you always do what? You always, after you come up with a new matrix, hit store, and then matrix A, enter. So now that's locked in, that's our new matrix A. Okay, so what we're gonna do at this point is make this negative 12 become a 1. So how are we going to make negative 12 become a 1? Well, here's how we're going to do that. We're going to multiply row 2, because that's where negative 12 is located, by the reciprocal of negative 12, which is negative 1/12. So negative 1/12 times row 2 will generate our new matrix. All right, so going back to the calculator, here's how I could perform that row operation. Second matrix, math, times row. The multiplier is negative 1/12. The matrix we're working on is A. And the row that's being multiplied by negative 1/12 is row 2. Note, we now have a 1 right there. That's exactly what we were trying to accomplish. All right, at this point we do what? We hit store, matrix A, every single time. Okay, I'm going to now put that information on my paper from my calculator. So what was it? 1, 1, 500, and then 0, 1, 200. Okay, so the final step is to make this 1 become a 0. pivoting through this 2, 2 entry. There's your diagonal. That's what we want. All right, so what do we need to do? Well, here is what we need to do. Row 1, that's the row that's changing. Write it down first. Then write down the opposite of the number you're trying to change. I pointed to the wrong one. The opposite of this one is -1. Times the row that contains your pivot entry, the row in which we just created a 1, row 2, goes next. And again, I'm going to use my calculator to perform this row operation. So, I do second matrix, go to math, times row plus. The multiplier is -1. The matrix we're working on is matrix A. And we're multiplying -1 through what row? That'd be row 2. And we're changing row 1. That's your fourth and final parameter. Go ahead and hit enter, and you have your answer. So I'm going to take this information from my calculator screen, write it on my paper. And because this is a word problem, we now want to make sure we answer the word problem correctly. So remember what we're trying to do here. How many acres of each crop should he plant? So he should plant 300 acres of, what does X equal? X was the number of acres of corn. Fantastic. And then 200 acres of wheat. Finished with the notes. For example, section 5.2, day 1. Have a good day.